even though I don't really have anything in common with the dude in that film, I feel like I also have a lot in common with him in terms of his outlook and just the way I'd like to be, just a little bit more relaxed, laid back, rolling with the punches, just living this life as it presents itself to you. Um, and just meeting interesting characters along the way and just having stories to tell.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. Let's talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and welcome to Film Journeys with Nathan Jones. And I am with a longtime friend of mine, one I've met multiple times in person, and somebody I talk to pretty much every day. Film blogger Sam, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm well. I'm very well, thank you. It is almost 3:30 in the afternoon in the UK, and yeah, I've had a good day. Just spent some time with my son this morning, and just very excited to just sit down, chat to one of my best friends about film. It's just one of my favorite things to do. So thanks for having me back on the channel.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I was gonna say it's 9:30 over here, so my day is yet to begin. Although I did wake up at 2 a.m.
As I
As
say,
we talked about earlier because of my dog. So I've been up since 2. So I'm a little loopy, but I've had coffee. I've watched I watched the Poughkeepsie tapes,
okay,
and
yep, I've seen that. Yeah,
um and I'm halfway through the new War of the Rohirrim animated Lord of the Rings movie. So I was busy this morning. So
nice. Yep, productive.
yeah. Well, speaking of movies, for everybody who hasn't been on the channel for some time, tell us more about kind of the stuff that you do, just in the spaces that you're in too, in terms of film watching and doing alternative film related things.
Sure. So I'm on YouTube under film blogger Sam. My channel's in a bit of a weird state at the moment. Hiatus, I don't think that's a thing. It's more time and energy that I don't have to make videos. But like a lot of people during the pandemic, I had a lot of free time and I wanted to have a creative outlet into discussing like one of my favorite things, which is film. So I did that. I set up a channel talking about physical media and film related things regarding that. And yeah, so I've had that since 2021. Um, and yeah, it's been a fun journey. I mean, for instance, I've made friends through that avenue, creative avenue, like yourself and like our mutual friend Davey and other people like Elliot and Chris and things like that. I've made friends through the platform. So I just made videos about things that I got into the collection, things that I'd watched and reviewed, and some other different types of topics. And then sort of more recently, I've done some like industry interviews with like Eugenio Kalani and Sam Deegan and Troy Howarth. I've had those on the channel and we've discussed their career and just the things that they've worked on in the past and things that at the point when the videos came out, like that had been announced that they'd worked on, and we talked about that. So sort of more of an insider, viewpoint of extras and special features stuff, and which is something that I aspire to do. um and yeah, so that's my channel really. I also have a podcast called Let's Watch 2, which again is in a sort of hiatus, but watch this space, it is coming back
Mhm.
very soon. It's going to have a bit of a reworking. It's still going to be called Let's Watch 2 and it's still going to be talking about two movies, but the trajectory of the show and stuff is going to take on a different spin to what it has been in the previous episodes, but I'm looking forward to doing that.
Me too.
And yeah, spoiler, Nathan will be joining me on the podcast. um and also on my Let's Watch 2 website, I've done a few like Blu-ray reviews, like blog sort of things, which I've enjoyed doing, but again, not had a huge amount of time to delve into those properly. But they're available for people to read. And yeah, I just love movies, love talking about movies, love watching movies, love reading about movies, love writing about movies. So pretty much anything under the umbrella of movies and film and stuff is my bag, and my tastes are broad. Horror is where I lean, and like more culty exploitation-y sort of stuff is where I lean, but like my tastes are all over the place, like classic Hollywood, Japanese films, like samurai type stuff. Just looking at my collection, I like musicals, just action films, sci-fi, mainstream Hollywood stuff as well. Yeah, that's me. I rambled way too much there, but that's me in a nutshell. And it's weird because obviously you know all this about me, so it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm just like I feel
Well,
like I'm repeating myself to you, but because we're such good friends. But anyone who doesn't know me, that's just me. As you see, probably up there is covered by a bunch of things. I have a Halloween 2 print poster up there, so that like tells you like some of my tastes. Like I like genre film, and like I love like horror franchise stuff, but then I have like a David Lynch Mulholland Drive print above my TV, and I love like art house stuff as well. So I feel like I can have a conversation about a large variety of different topics in the film space. But yeah, back to
yeah.
you, Mr. Nathan Jones.
Well, it's funny because obviously, yeah, I know a lot of these things, but for the people watching at home, also, like I know you mentioned Eugenio, which I think we can tell that story. As speaking of um, we how you met him, or how we met him, of all things,
Yeah,
when I was over there in the UK, visiting. We were in London,
we
and
were.
yeah, and then we went to Brewdog in near, I think, was it near the FOP?
It was. Yeah, it
Okay,
was
yeah,
7 Dials, near Covent Garden, to be
yeah,
precise. So
yeah.
yeah.
So, and then I just overheard somebody say Kirk Douglas, and and I'm just like, and I'm like, wait, who brings up Kirk Douglas and randomly in a conversation? And then we both looked over, and you're like, I think that's Eugenio. So it's
Yeah, I
just
recognized his voice first, to be honest, because I listened to a load of his commentaries and stuff. So I was just like, and then I could see him, but it was like a profile view, side profile. So you can't always quite tell who someone is. And we weren't too far away. It was only a few meters away, but I was like, it looks like him. But like, I hadn't seen too many photos of him online, to be honest. And then I was just like, no, that's him. And then for a little while, I didn't have the like courage or confidence, I should say, to go over and speak to him. And then I think he must have popped out to have a cigarette or something, and then asked his
talk to his
friend who
friend.
was sat then who also is like he produces special features and stuff. Um, Mike, like, is that Eugenio? And he's like, what? You know who he is? I was like, yeah, like I love
Yeah,
his work. I'm a big fan of his stuff. And then we got chatting, and then obviously they were having a meeting about work, and we
we
were just
interrupted.
we interrupted them for a good hour, just talking about movies and stuff. And it was fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that was just a weird coincidence because we weren't even going to sit in that part of the bar. We were going to sit in the front where we
where
walked in, where
everyone
the
else
bar
was.
was. Yeah, and then we was like, oh no, we'll walk around the back, and then we ordered our food and stuff. So that could have been a opportunity missed, just by literally a split second deciding not to sit in one space and sit around the corner where no one else was, and then they happened to be there. So very strange. I don't
Yeah,
believe in fate, but like just weird coincidences and
yeah.
things just happening. Yeah.
It was a good coincidence, and I'm glad I was there to witness that. And I mean, that whole trip in general was kind of a fever dream now, thinking about it. But obviously, that was my second go around over there. But I'm yearning to come back, is what I'm saying, just to have more happenstance, encounters with people that I may or may not know. So that's, I mean, I also just really love that part of the world. So, not to get into the geography of things, in the politics, but yeah, no, it's cool to see the going back to your writing and kind of the the evolution of what you've been doing lately. Is it seems to be, obviously with life you have a lot of things going on, like most of us, but it seems to me that you are getting a better idea of and kind of support for the things that you really want to do. And so I think that's a really nice treat and segue into the kind of the stuff that you're doing now, which I think is wonderful. And it's great that you're writing more things, and also just talking with the people in the industry that who are watching this kind of stuff, and then also the people who make these wonderful discs that we're about to talk about, and the people who, like, I guess, put all the special features together and kind of court and what, I can't think of the word, where they present something, I suppose. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but it's, yeah, no. So just big kudos to you for getting, some, I guess, things checked off your list of things that you've been wanting to do for a while. So
Cheers. Thank you. Hmm.
yeah. Well, with that being said, you have been on the channel before, multiple times for various different things, and but this is the film journey, so I'm gonna kind of reiterate it to our past conversation we've had in back then, but also obviously there's new things that's happened since then. So I normally ask what's the earliest movie memory, but I'm gonna ask what has changed in the last 4 to 5 years, you think, in terms of your movie watching and the stuff that you've been doing behind the scenes. Like, is there any particular memories besides like the pub that we both went to, that you can remember that have gotten you to this point?
Um, well, in the last 5 years, I wouldn't, when I first came on your channel, I wouldn't have studied film. So it's 3 years ago, come this June, I studied postgrad global film studies. It was a huge undertaking, mainly because my son was born, and I thought this was a great opportunity to do it at the time, because obviously I would be there for him and stuff, but he couldn't walk. He was a young child that couldn't walk or do much, so it'd be a lot of just holding him, feeding him, changing him. He's not like what he is now, where he's running around the house like a headless chicken, which I love, but there's no time for it in my life with working full time to be able to study as well, without completely burning myself out. So I studied film, and I got my master's in film studies. I'm not doing anything in my day-to-day life with film. My career is completely different to that. I just did it through personal growth, really, and just personal interest and just my passion. So took it upon myself to do that, and from that I really honed my research and writing skills I find through that. And lots I learned about academia, that some things I like, some things I don't like about the whole space are involved in that. But ultimately, I really enjoyed my time doing that, and it was probably the only time in my life where I really enjoyed education, which is a good job, because I took it upon myself to do that, and paid for it and stuff. And so, but from that, it really inspired me to want to break into the space in a different way. And I'd apply there, different labels had jobs come up. That a lot of people don't realize that they do actually advertise when positions come up. So I'm not going to name drop any of them, but some of the quite popular labels have had positions come up to work for them, and I applied for these and was unsuccessful in getting anywhere, even an interview or anything like that, for these places. Probably because of my lack of experience in the field. Not that I don't know much about physical media in general. I do. I feel like I know quite a lot about it, but there's a whole lot of stuff behind the scenes that I don't know, and obviously that probably didn't get me anywhere. But yeah, I wanted to just have some creative output in the world. Whether people read it or listened to it or not, it wasn't the most important thing. It was more me like getting things off my chest, or I don't know, just being creative for the sake of being creative, but with purpose of saying something about a particular release of a film that I liked, or a topic that's a theme in film history that I've particularly found interesting. And so, you know, I tried for a while to do that and submit things to various labels to say, like, I would like to do some writing for you, but I'd never heard anything. I'm sure that probably people do that quite often. And if you're not an established name and don't have a record of doing that sort of stuff, they tend to not really entertain you.
Yeah.
Just,
It,
you know, you could be a really good writer and you know, produce work that's on par, if not better, than some of the stuff that we get in physical media releases now. But if you're not in, then it's difficult to break in to it. So yeah, so I rambled about that. So that's just where I was in terms of like studying, education, things like that. But in terms of my film viewing habits these days, I don't watch as much film as I have been. Say in the last couple of years, my film watching is like significantly dropped off. I used to watch maybe 300 to 400 films a year, which is quite a lot. But now I would struggle to hit 200, maybe between 150 to 200 movies a year, and some of those would be short films as well.
right.
So, and that's a combination of things. One, work being a huge time suck in my life. I have a young family, which is something that I love spending time with them, and that takes up time watching movies. And then when I do have time to watch movies, it's in the evening and I'm usually quite tired. So it's not always the best time to delve into like a really cerebral art house film when you're
Yeah.
you're about ready to fall asleep. When you put the film on, you think, oh, I probably shouldn't put this on. So there's a lot of times I put off watching certain things until I have an opportune moment to watch it. And my tastes have changed a bit. And I would say that my thirst for different types of cinema leans more towards more underground stuff. It leans towards that. That's not what I primarily like. Like one of my favorite films recently was Dune 2, Dune Part 2. Like I absolutely adored that. Like I'm not against like big budget, you know, Hollywood stuff. Like, but I've been really enjoying a lot of the stuff like Vinegar Syndrome and Severin have been putting out, more off the beaten path. Unless you're like, you grew up in the 80s in like the
Hmm.
video stores and stuff, which I didn't grow up in the 80s in the video store. I did, you know, I'm still old enough to know like renting VHSs and like DVDs from things like Blockbusters, or we had Choices in the UK, and different parts of the UK is another one. So I still remember that, but like hardcore, like being of age in the 80s, renting those VHS tapes and stuff. There's people who are like seeing these things come out from like Vinegar Syndrome and Severin, who are just absolutely blown away that these things are getting released. And most of us, unless you're like really deep diving into the culture of the, you know, the cult films and just like B horror movies and stuff, most people haven't heard of this stuff. But like I eat that up. I'm like looking for the people who were able to create things back in the day when, you know, the budget was like for the films was made back through rental sales and stuff like that, and people buying the physical media, which is not a thing as much these days, which is why there are less like wild swings taken when films are getting made, I guess.
Well, I was going to say this. I mean, you brought something up that reminded me of another moment of ours on our trips to All Ages Records,
Oh,
going in the back, in the back,
oh yeah, oh yeah, we can talk
going in
about
the
that.
back, looking at the, you know, speaking of, I mean, especially, I mean, this is something I can't really speak much on, because coming from the States, you know, I guess the rating systems here were a lot more relaxed, or at least, not as underground, if you will.
Hmm.
So like things like Video Nasties, or, you know, things along the lines that Vinegar Syndrome or Severin might put out.
Yeah.
Um, those kind of movies are kind of those cult underground movies that you had mentioned, but it's wild to me to think of the underground scene going back to, you know, what we when we were at the record store. Pretty much what happened is we go there every time we're there because it's a punk and metal shop, and that's stuff that we listen to. And you know, the owner, who you've met multiple times, you know, led us to the back as we started talking about movies, and showed us his like Blu-ray and DVD collection, and there were so many kind of I guess counterfeit, maybe
They were
not
count.
counterfeit,
They
yeah,
were bootleg. They were
bootleg,
bootleg
yeah,
copies.
that's the word. Bootleg movies, but like from that, like those times that were things like this is the only way you can get this.
Yeah.
Um,
But
and
now
I
we're
just
getting pristine 4K restorations of them on deluxe boutique things. But 10, 15 years ago, these weren't they weren't a thing. Like some of these labels were around and whatnot, but on Vinegar Syndrome weren't. Or were they? No, they were maybe on the cusp of being around, but some of these labels weren't, and they certainly weren't in the depths of releasing this stuff. So for a lot of
right,
people, yeah, it was the bootlegs of getting these weird things, and he was taking stuff off the shelf and showing us, and we were like, yeah, that's got a brand new release from Vinegar Syndrome, or Severin have put that out now. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, like this is legally out there now. Like people
yeah,
can get an official copy of this in a nice brand spanking presentation with a booklet sometimes, and special features of people
a
talking
bad
about
disc.
it, and commentaries and essays and stuff.
Mm.
And yeah, he was surprised. But yeah, he you know, being a punk store primarily, but also selling metal, he had a very punk ethos, and yeah, had like basically um just an interesting relic of what used to be of him
Yeah, and
doing stuff.
I hope he never changes too, because I love that store and that ethos too.
Mm.
Because things like that, I mean, it's like a time capsule thinking about things like that. And but going back to, you know, kind of the, I guess, to transition to kind of what you had been doing for the past few years with, you know, studying film and having the time finally to do that, and then obviously shifting to now, with more of a focus on family and just life in general, you know. Is there any particular movies as of those like last few years that you can remember that have been kind of revelatory for you in the ways that you've been watching movies, or maybe you saw something for the second time, but with, you know, older age, and now you're like, well, this speaks to me. Is there any movies in particular that you can recall?
In the last couple of years, one of the films that absolutely was was a revelation, and it's actually a modern film, um completely separate to what my tastes are leaning towards these days, which is more horror, B exploitation films. But Charlotte Wells's After Sun,
Oh man.
one of the best films I've ever seen. It it it's one of those films, very similar to, say, something like, I call these out all the time because I can't think of other examples, but they're true because they're, to me, films that change the way I view cinema. So things like Mulholland Drive, or Mirror, um,
Like Beau
uh,
Travail or something.
and Beau Travail. Exactly,
Yeah.
that's a good pick, because that's one of my favorite films of all time as well. And then Charlotte Wells's After Sun. There are other examples, but it just altered the way I viewed how a film can be constructed and make me feel things. Um, and yeah, that one in recent times was absolutely, yeah, blew my socks off. And I continued. I've seen the film twice, and I'm scared to watch it again now, because I don't know, like, if it's not hyped in my head, but like I don't want the magic of that film to ever fade, because I was scared to watch it for the second time. I was like, oh, if I watch this again, is it going to be nowhere near as good as the first time I watched it? But no, it, like, again, blew me away. And even knowing where the film goes towards the end, like, knowing it was coming, added to my anxiety about everything, which is odd, because obviously first time watch, you don't know where it's going.
Sure. Hmm.
So, but now I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about ever watching that film again. I'm sure I will, but it's going to be a number of years before I revisit it. But that really altered the way I view films and what films can do. It's just masterfully put together, and so simple yet effective, just grounded in great performances and just very clever editing, without being flashy as well. It's just amazing. Other films, things that I may have rewatched and stuff. Oh, that's a difficult question. I know that I have interesting takes, or I've never been what's the word for it when you don't have an opinion that goes with the crowd. So
Hot take?
not a hot take, but I can't remember the word, but it's something to do with like a contrarian. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
But
contrarian.
yeah, so yep. I've never. Oh, my dog is coming into the room.
Oh,
hello, Johnny.
Hey, Johnny.
We have a visitor.
Well, my dog's right here too, so we're gonna keep this in here.
Hey, come on, you look here. There you go, buddy. To be a contrarian, yeah. So I've never really been one. I've generally think it's the general consensus is that it's particularly in like the film community that a film is pretty decent. You know, there's varying levels of how much you like something, but I'll generally be like, yeah, it was good, or I liked it, or I loved it, or something like that, to a film that's generally considered to be a good film. But there are a few films that I absolutely adore that many people really, really don't like. So one of my all-time favorite horror films is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Right now, most people don't like the first one, and I'm one of them. I don't think it's there's aesthetic choices I like about it, but generally I just don't vibe with the film really at all. I like Rob Zombie as a filmmaker. I think House of Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects are really, really good films, and his Lords of Salem is probably his best looking film and probably best made film, probably. I don't know, but that's an amazing film. Like, I think most people who don't like his style of filmmaking will probably like Lords of Salem, because it's very different, and it's very grounded, and it doesn't have that. It's not littered with that vulgarity that he has throughout his other films. It's very folky, but anyway. But yeah, his Halloween 2. It is honestly one of my all-time favorite films. It has like a 2.2 or something on Letterboxd. You know, this is not a well-loved film, and so many people just absolutely shit on it all the time. And I kind of see why, but then again, I'm really not trying to be a contrarian. I honestly believe it's one of the best horror films I've ever seen. And I've written an essay that was published in the Physical Media Advocate, you know, our mutual friend Ryan from Disconnected, his zine. I did that for the Halloween, not last year, but the year before. So I just wanted to get something out there to say like why I love this and why people should give it another chance. But it's such a hard sell when it's a sequel to a film that isn't very good. So, but I feel like if you know the story of Halloween, you don't really even need to see the first Rob Zombie remake. You can just even watch Halloween, like John Carpenter's, and then watch Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, because it's. But anyway, I love that film dearly. So I would say my tastes and things like other films that I really like that most people don't is like Southland Tales, the Richard Kelly film, who directed Donnie Darko, which is like a beloved cult classic, and then he followed it up with Southland Tales and basically killed his career. Basically, he did make a couple more films, or at least one film after that, but yeah, I think it's genius. I honestly do. I think it's an amazing film, and not ironically. I just think it's just wildly misunderstood. So sometimes I don't know. It's just if it's my brain is made up differently and where I see things. But yeah, other than that, there's not many films that I tend to rewatch where it changes my opinion, because unless it's the rare occasion where it's something like a David Lynch film where I didn't particularly jive with it the first time I watched it, and then I rewatch it over multiple occasions, and then it solidifies into like my favorite film, like Mulholland Drive. Generally, if I don't vibe with something on first go, I don't tend to revisit things unless it's for the purpose of a podcast or going onto someone's channel, or you know, something like that, which has not been too many occasions. So I can't think of an occasion where I've like revisited some work and had like this click where I've gone, oh, I now get it, or anything like that, because I have so many films to watch that I will rewatch things, but things that I like. So I'm getting better now at, like, if I watch something on my shelf that I haven't watched before, of moving on, like selling it, getting rid of it, and not having that fear of, like, what happens if I want to watch it in 5 years' time and I don't have it anymore because I didn't like it the first time and I want to rewatch it and see if my mind's changed. I'm just getting a lot better. There's too many other things to watch for the first time, and rewatching things that I already love changed the way I view things. But in terms of rewatches of stuff from the past, I can't think of any examples. I mean, I know this, you're interviewing me for this, but, like, are there any things for you that
Yeah.
you've rewatched in recent times where you've gone, oh, I was wrong, or now that I've had more life experience and more maybe experience watching other types of films from different directors and stuff, that can then inform your opinion of a different film that you watched that you didn't like before because of experience watching other things, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, and you know pretty well about this. I'm going to transition to David Lynch. As you
Mm,
had mentioned earlier. And I would credit you and Chris and Davey and a lot of friends in my life who have loved David Lynch for the longest time, but it's never clicked with me uh, until watching Twin Peaks.
mm,
Thanks to Chris in particular. He's the one who, like, just watch just watch the pilot and you'll see what happens. And but it that woke up my mind to David Lynch more, and I had seen Mulholland Drive, which that was probably at the time my favorite thing he's done, but it wasn't something I really necessarily loved that much as everyone else. And I really didn't like Blue Velvet. And now I think Blue Velvet's a masterpiece. I think it's like a 5 out of 5 type of movie,
oh
which
yeah.
is just really funny to me that a few years ago I watched that movie and thought it was trash, and then now I'm like, no, this is one of the best movies of all time. In my like top 100 list, I would probably put Blue Velvet's probably my favorite Lynch movie at the
Mm,
moment. Um, but that being said, it's interesting. Going back to what you were talking about, just general life experiences, but also being open to things like that are kind of universally panned by other
mm,
people. Like Halloween 2, for instance, like you had mentioned. I think it's really fascinating to me as we grow older and as we kind of expand into what we like with movies or like what we're with you. I know you had mentioned cutting back and scaling back on some things you might not rewatch, which I need to be better about that myself. But I've gotten so comfortable with the idea of watching something and being in the mindset of I'm going to get something out of this, no matter what happens in
mm,
this movie, which I think credits to the blind buy kind of mentality. But
yeah.
I have there's so many things that you can get some from this kind of world that we're in. And obviously you don't have to buy them physically. You can stream them or borrow them or go to the library. Hopefully, if I don't know if libraries in your neck of the woods has like movies that you can take home, but
They used
um,
to. I mean, I haven't been into a library in the longest time, to be honest. There's a
right.
library 2 minutes down the road from me, but um, yeah, I've not been in it. I should probably correct that. At least just walk in and see what they have available, because they might have a DVD collection on the shelf for people to take out. And to be honest, if they do, I could probably donate some things to them because
Yeah, yeah,
there's so many things that I could, like, they're not worth selling because they're not really worth anything. Like, you're not going to get 50p or a
yeah. You're not gonna
pound for
get
them on eBay.
anything.
So I'd rather give it away than sell it, to be honest, to let someone get some use out of it. Um, I don't have too much of that because I have really scaled back my. I say I've scaled back. I've sold so much, but then not recently, but things so much just keeps coming in.
Right. I mean, you
But
got
yeah, that
Vinegar Syndrome and the package and
yeah,
um,
exactly.
but
So
it's a fun roller coaster though. I mean, to
hmm,
me, like obviously there's money involved, which you can get much deeper, especially with how the world is changing right now in particular. And I think times are going to get a little tougher, especially for the things that we're enjoying right now. Um, Not to go into that rabbit hole, but I think it's good to know that we have all these options that like available to us, whether
hmm,
that's streaming, physical media, just in general. But like to me, like what I've gained over the last few years, kind of to mirror that question back at me is I've just become more curious, I think, and I think it's a good thing. So because I think it's made me, just like Roger Ebert always says, like, the empathetic machine that movies, add to your life. I think I credit that that empathy a lot to the things that I watch and the experiences that I'm like will never ever happen to me. But even if it's fictional, there's some reality in there, and there's some truth to what they're trying to get after. Or if not, like David Lynch, it doesn't really have to mean much. So, and being
Yeah.
content with that as well, like just
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
okay with not knowing. And I love that feeling, and it's so foreign to so many people in my
Yes,
life that
exactly. It's like, it's, to some people they would disagree, but for me, particularly like people like Lynch, it's ambiguity without being ambi for ambi is
can be.
ambiguity without being ambiguous for the sake of it, if that makes sense. So he has purpose behind it, but he's not going
Yeah,
to tell
it's
you
got
what it
purpose.
is, and that's up to him because he's the artist, he's making the work. It's up to us to imprint what we feel about the atmosphere or vibe we have got from what he's presenting us. And there are other directors that do it too. No one as good as Lynch in my personal opinion, but it's fascinating, and it's where some of the best storytelling and films come from, where you can, it's not like always the open-ended story or anything, it's just like, why was that creative choice made, and what was the purpose behind it? And you're like, there's no clear set answer, so you can just make your own mind up about it, or not even make, because sometimes you're like, I don't have no idea what to think about that, but I love the feeling of just being like out in the water, not knowing what to think about
Yeah,
anything, and just letting a mood or a vibe just wash over you, and then moving on to the next thing, and not having to worry about trying to decipher everything. It's it works a bit like music. Sometimes you don't always need to understand the message of what the lyrics or the music's saying, as long as you can feel the intent of the emotion of it, is maybe the most important thing. And that's where someone like Lynch is really good, in my opinion. Some people don't like him, or just don't vibe with certain types of films by him, but that's why he'll always be king to me, because of that aesthetic and that way of being able to communicate a feeling without explicitly saying what it is through the exposition or the dialogue or something like that. It's just a framing or a vibe or a musical cue or something like that. It's just so good.
yeah. I mean, you touched on it a little bit with talking about music, and that's the other thing too, that we both of us share a common love for the genres that we listen to. And um it's interesting because obviously I have my records back here, Converge being one of your favorite bands, Mutual and Deaf Heaven right behind me. Um, it's interesting. I mean, going back to how we view, these films, I think it's very, I'm trying to, I probably don't have the right verbiage for this, but it's definitely, the aesthetic of the things that it's, telling me through, I guess, a vibe or an energy of
Mm.
some sort. That's kind of what I get from a lot of my movie watching as well. And even if I'm watching something like, let's just say like 12 Angry Men, which has a clear set and like structure, and there's
Yep.
there's all these, it's got a very set story. But I love that. But then there's also things that are like super chaotic and messy, like Jane Doe right here, for instance. Music like that is really articulate and very calculated. But to most people, they might look at it and they're like, "Oh wow, this is just noise," or "This is just something that is not this. I'm not comprehending it. I don't, they don't appreciate it or they don't love it, and that's okay, and that's fine. They don't have to love it." But I think that's going back to movie watching. That's the thing that I've tapped into a lot more recently,
Yeah.
is just letting things wash over me, even if it's not something I can make total sense of. Um,
Hmm.
but anyway, going down a surreal path right now, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah. Well, turning it back to you, I guess. You had mentioned some movies that have kind of changed the way you've looked at things a couple of times recently. But I'm asking this question more recently. But if there is a movie that you could pick in your collection that would represent you as a person, like for instance, me, I would say In Bruges really encapsulates the type of person that I am because of my love of comedy, also tragedy, and like this very I guess nebulous, melancholic kind of sense ability to my own life. But you know, I, what about you? Is there like a movie or two that like if you would present somebody a film that you'd be like, this is kind of who I am in a way, or represent you in a way?
It's a very hard question. It's like it's it's like insanely difficult and complex to answer. But I'll try my best. But I have a poster in my movie room of a film that's very dear to me. That's right above my movie chair, and you would have seen this when you stayed in this room when you stayed over. But it's The Big Lebowski. Now, this is in my top 10 films of all time. It's not my favorite, but it's very close. But the reason I'm going to say The Big Lebowski is a film that basically best summarizes me is because although I'm not a stoner, like the dude is in The Big Lebowski, and I'm not, unemployed as such, there's a lot of his way of looking at the world that I see in him. He's very laid back, and I'm quite a laid back person, almost to the point where sometimes I'm laying down on certain subjects. And it's got a certain sort of humor that I feel is getting lost in the world slightly, maybe, because it's definitely not a broad comedy, and even the comedy, when it's really good, it isn't always laugh out loud. It's just more like a stimulating. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Like, there are moments in the film that make me laugh out loud, but there's a lot of it where just because I'm not laughing out loud all the time doesn't mean I'm not finding it like one of the most funny films I've ever seen, and that I have watched so many times. Like, I don't know if it's the most in my adult life, at least, because there would have been Disney films or something that I watched on repeat as a kid, so it's not the most watched film in my life. But The Big Lebowski, along with another film which is also a comedy, which I should also say, I do like comedies, but I'm much more of a TV comedy person than a TV film person, because a film comedy person, because I find a lot of film comedies can be too broad. The jokes are just way too broad, and not that I need niche comedy to. Well, I guess I do. Like, my comedy can be very specific, which is why I don't like always telling jokes or showing my humor when I'm in certain situations, because it is just not to everyone's cup of tea, or not even just like, it's not even like offensive humor or anything. It's just odd at times, and unless I'm around specific people, I don't let that show, because I can read a room basically, and I know whether it's just people are just gonna be like, you're just being a weirdo or whatever, so
Right.
But The Big Lebowski is something that even though I don't really have anything in common with the dude in that film, I feel like I also have a lot in common with him in terms of his outlook and just the way I'd like to be, just a little bit more relaxed, laid back, rolling with the punches, just living this life as it presents itself to you, and just meeting interesting characters along the way, and just having stories to tell and stuff. But another one that I would say that goes with that. Carrot, you say something first.
I was gonna say you do have that robe and that wig so you try to.
And I do love White Russians, so I'm always
That's
drinking
that's
those.
fair. That was that was one of my first cocktails actually because of that movie.
Oh, that's awesome. And then a film that may surprise you. I don't know if I've told you this, but one of my all-time favorite films, again, also in my top 10 films of all time, is Wet Hot American Summer. So I don't know what it is about that film, but the weird, zany, stupid humor that is in that film just tickles me every single time. It's like my ultimate The Big Lebowski and Wet Hot American Summer are like my ultimate comfort watch movies. I've watched them both countless times. Sometimes I've watched them in like bits, like because it's a comfort movie, I'll sometimes put it on and then I'll watch it for like 40 minutes and then I'll fall asleep, or I'll decide I don't want to watch it anymore because I've seen it so many times. But
Right.
it's always that initial putting it on, starting it, feeling a sense of calmness, and just I just love being in the world that's created for those two films. So I'd say those two films. I don't know if that's a very good in terms of describing me and my character very well, but it's where my character feels most comfortable, um, and being able to revisit it without getting bored per se. You know, I can
Yeah.
go back to those films again and again and again, and just feel like I'm having a conversation with an old friend, and just love it. I just love those films. So I guess they're in my top 10, but then neither of them are my favorite films of all time. But they're very good contenders for being my favorite films, mainly because of how many times I watched them, how many times, why I watch them. One, because they're hilarious, and two, they're just the worlds that they create are just so comforting to me. Can't explain why. I probably could if I like sat down and did a deep
Yeah. I can see
psychological
it.
analysis of it. But I mean, and the Coen brothers are masters. Like specifically for The Big Lebowski, it's an incredibly well-made film for a stupid comedy that really doesn't have anything to say about anything. You know,
Right.
it's just ridiculous. But The Wet Hot American Summer is like, it's not particularly the most well-made film. It doesn't look particularly
It's the
interesting. Like
ensemble.
I like it, but it's the ensemble. It's also knowing about the conditions it was made on under and stuff like that really adds to it. And I just, some of the jokes in it are hilarious, and just
Yeah.
seeing all the cast before they like made it big, like all these people that are in it, like Paul Rudd and Bradley Cooper, like were in it and
Amy
stuff before they were
Poehler.
like big.
Yeah.
And then obviously they broke out and like became superstars and stuff. So it's just, I love those. So I'd say those two films. The Big Lebowski number one, but following up very, very closely is Wet Hot American Summer, mainly because, as I said, of how they make me feel. And if you feel very similar to me about those two films, or at least one of them, we would get on very well. That's all I'd
Yeah.
say. Like
That's what I was gonna
we could
say.
have many differences in other things, but there would be like a very strong uh, uh, bit of rope between us that would never snap, because we have this mutual love of something that's very dear to us, for one reason or another. But the Big Lebowski has a huge cult thing around it. Like they have festival, like the Dude Festival or something. I don't know if that's still going anymore, but it ran for years. Of like everyone just turns up dressed in like in a robe and shorts and sandals, and just drink White Russians all weekend and just watch the Big Lebowski on loop and stuff like that. Um, yeah,
My
I love
former
it. I love
boss
it.
actually, he's got long. Well, he did have long hair, and he definitely dressed up as the dude every time we had Halloween, um, which I loved. And he is more of a, more like his character, if you will, without saying it. But I do like the tether that you had mentioned, kind of like, because I mean, obviously we get along swimmingly for various reasons, but at the same time, like, my love of like Billy Madison, or things like Garth Marenghi, which you introduced me to. Um, like I haven't laughed that hard, and I can't even think like how like that meant, like just that those moments of stuff like what you're kind of describing, where kind of describe who you as a person that maybe you don't show outwardly
Hmm.
all the time, but at the same time this is like a part of you, like is refreshing, because I think that's the other thing cool about that question I like to ask, is kind of getting a little peek into like where people's personalities really lie.
Yeah.
Um, and at the end of the day, we're both silly goobers, is pretty much what we're saying. The other thing too is like, thinking about, a lot of these, you had mentioned like comfort films, like those kind of growing up, but I also introduced this new question recently, more to kind of get an idea of looking at your current self and then looking at your past self a little bit. And that being, if you could give like a list or a couple of movies that you would recommend to yourself as a kid, like a little version of yourself, that you wish you had watched sooner, maybe. Um, like, what would you recommend to your younger self to watch?
Very introspective question. I like it. Um, okay, so one of them would probably be, one of them would probably be Paris, Texas by Wim Wenders, and I would want to watch that earlier because when did I watch it? I watched it for the first time, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago. I've seen it twice now. So yeah, it's I love it. I love it to bits. But the reason why I'd want to watch that maybe earlier in my life is because the film has so much to say about forgiveness and just the power of the family, power of family and friends. Okay, you could call it friends as well. And it's just yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I think I just think
Yeah,
it's an amazing film, and its messaging is something that I feel people could use as early on in their life as they could. I don't think the film, it's not like it's unsuitable in terms of it having like inappropriate content, but like maybe some younger viewers may get some of the messaging lost because they haven't had as much life experience per
or they might be
se.
bored, maybe with
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
very dialogue driven. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. It's not like an action film or anything, and it's not like a twist. There's not a big twist film, or it's not like it's just a straight up slow burn drama, basically, with an incredible score.
yeah,
With quite
shout out.
Raikuda's score, and then just really good performances as well to boot. Yeah. So moving on from Paris, Texas, I would also give myself a film by Peter Watkins called Punishment Park. Have you seen this film?
I have not.
It's in, I think it might still be in print, I don't know, but it was in the Masters of Cinema collection from Eureka, and it's a pseudo documentary, so it's meant to look like a documentary, but it's not. It's like all staged and stuff. It came out in the 70s, and basically it's a film to warn people how scary fascism is in America. So
Well, that's a little on time.
and the reason I'd want to watch that earlier is just to get more of a grip about that sort of thing in the world a bit earlier, maybe. I thought we all like to live in our bubbles, but just being a bit more clued into things like that in general. But through a very interesting, it's very entertaining. It's totally serious. There's like, it's not tongue in cheek or anything. It's like goes for it. But yeah, when I watched it for the first time, I thought it was a real documentary to start with, and then I realized, okay, this isn't true. Like 20 minutes in, I was like, okay, this obviously isn't real because I would have heard about this. So basically, it's set in an alternate in the 1970s in which people who are like anti-establishment or anti-government or anything like that, basically they commit certain crimes, they either go to jail for like 25 years or they can choose to take on Punishment Park, which is a huge stretch of desert somewhere in America. And what they are done, they're set free with no implements, no food, no water, but they have to get to the other side of the desert whilst they're being tailed by like law enforcement, basically. So they're given a head start, and then they have to get to the other side. And if they do, then they basically don't have to serve their sentence. But if they, as you can probably tell from the film, some of the people along the way, they get caught, they get things happen to them by the authorities, and it's very damning critique of not just America, but just any society that was like that in the 70s and stuff. So it's absolutely incredible. I highly recommend people watch that if they can get an opportunity. But yeah, I'd want to watch that earlier because blew me away, and it's a very important film.
Yeah, I was gonna say
And
I'm gonna have
then
to add that to my list. So
you'd love it. Like I mean, it's not like really hard to watch. It's just more hard because of the similarities it
The
has to
implications
things
for
going on,
right.
maybe around places in the world right now. But yeah, it's not. It is shocking, but it's not like overly graphic or anything like that. It's just more in the messaging and stuff. It like really hits the nail on the head. But yeah, I think you would really enjoy it. It's an incredible feat of filmmaking as well. The way it looks like a documentary, but then you realize it isn't. But then even some points during the film, you're like, this looks and feels like a documentary, but it isn't a documentary. So it's like perfectly crafted. You never at once like lose the illusion that what you're watching is like not real,
Yeah,
but you
sounds like
feel
a
like
good
it is.
aesthetic.
It's amazing, and obviously it was shot
Yeah,
on film in the 70s, so it's like not made in modern day and then made to look older than what it is as well. So it's got like that really good made in the times that it's like critiquing as well. So yeah, I absolutely love that. And then not to repeat an answer, but I would love to have seen Wet Hot American Summer because it's my ultimate
same.
comfort movie. I would love to have seen that in my teenage years, where I probably would have really annoyed my friends and made them watch it over and over again, like I have since in my adult life. And I would have had more time of whether it was being a comfort movie. But then again, who knows? If I'd have watched it in my teenage years, I might have found it okay and then never have rewatched it again and again. And it's only because I found it now that something's clicked with me. But hope if I know what I would be like, I would like to watch it then and then have more time with it, loving it as I do now, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
maybe that answers a cop out, but like that's how much I love that film. I wish I'd seen it 10 years earlier and been able to have so much more time with it because I love it. Yeah, that's the ultimate comfort movie. So yeah, they're my answers. So what did I say? I said
Paris,
yeah,
Texas.
Paris, Texas, Punishment Park, and Wet Hot American Summer, which is
All very thematically very similar films.
no one's choosing Wet
They're
Hot
all set in
American Summer.
America. All set in America, and
Yeah,
they are surprisingly all very American films.
even though
Um,
one of them's made by a German man. Yeah,
that's true, and that one feels like
it is a
one of
very American film though.
that
That's
feels
the
like one of the
thing.
best American movies ever made. You
Yes,
know, like
yeah, and it's not
so
made by an American. Yeah.
right.
Well, it's the thing
You
of
know,
like old school Hollywood and stuff was made by a lot of not like European film
oh yeah,
directors
like Fritz
came
Lang,
over and stuff, and they're
even
like American films, but they're made by European directors. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, this is sensibility.
mm,
That unfortunately, to critique us over here in the states a little bit more, but the hubris that we don't have in terms of looking insular to a lot of the things that we do, and around the world too, because we have such an influence on the world. I mean, just as your culture has as well, but at the same time, there's a little bit of introspection that I think with your choices that you had mentioned, like even the serious ones like Punishment Park, but like also just thinking about like Wet Hot American Summer, even like it's this comfort film that doesn't really have necessarily much to do with how society is, but it is overtly political too, because how everything's political in a
oh yeah,
way. So
yeah,
and you and I are very similar in that headspace. But
yeah,
I do find it very fascinating that those worlds can kind of be around each other, but then at the same time, like we can elicit different feelings with each of those choices. So, which makes it really wonderful, honestly. Even though not
agreed.
all those movies are wonderful in
No,
terms of
yeah,
how you should feel about them, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
So, um, I guess as we're kind of gathering all these thoughts together, and I kind of covered more questions about like kind of some more recent things going on in your life, and then looking back a little bit, thinking about some movies that have meant a lot to you. What would you say to the people watching at home for just I guess the way you look at films now and the way that you I guess what you're hoping for in the future with the industry, but also just like with physical media. Like, do you have like a nice trajectory in your head, or like what you hope for something that's coming up? Or I don't know. That's probably a very
That's very vague.
Very vague question, but I meant it in a very like open-ended way. You know, like
Okay, well,
what are
I
you looking
hope.
forward to?
Oh, well, I want more. Let's say, for instance, I haven't seen this film yet, but not long after we finish the conversation, I will be getting my son ready. He's going to go over to his nan's house for a sleepover, and me and my partner are going to go watch Sinners tonight,
I'm
which I'm
excited
very
to see.
excited for because one, the hype around it is insane, and everyone I know who's seen it is giving it glowing reviews. But also, it's like a film that's getting these sorts of reviews that is like an original thing. Like it's not part of a franchise. It's not an IP that's being adapted or something like that. It's like a brand new thing, and it's like what I wish more movies were like to pull me in to the theater. I don't go as much as I'd like to, mate. We've already discussed, we're like with work and family life and stuff. I just don't have as much time as I'd like to go out and see things. But when I do make the occasion to go out, I want it to be for things that are going to excite me, and I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. It could be not my thing. So, but I'm excited at the prospect of what Sinners could be for me tonight. So I want more original stuff to be coming out in the theaters, at least. That's for modern day stuff. I think a lot of people share that sentiment. You know, that's not an uncommon opinion that people are a bit burnt out on, you know, the Marvel, DC, Disney whole thing that's going on there. And some, don't get me wrong, some of it I've enjoyed, and you know, I'm not going to, you know, completely pan everything that's come out. There are things like in the Star Wars universe that have come out in recent years that I've liked and enjoyed, but there's just too much of it. It's churned out. A lot of it is just I find poorly written, and just
Fancy.
nothing takes any risks really anymore. It seems like everything needs to appease people, and that's where art gets sloppy and boring. And I'm not saying you need to make controversial films or extreme films. You just need to just take different choices, not for the sake of taking different choices. This is difficult for me to describe what I want because I'm not a filmmaker, but just something off the beaten path, something that takes risks. And we need more of that, I think, because although the great things come out fairly regularly, there is a lot of slop that comes out, for my tastes anyway. You know, other people might find that films are really, really, really good right now, but yeah, in terms of physical media, um, I think physical media just needs to carry on going where it's been going for the last 5 years or so. I think it's fantastic. I'm hoping, you know, in the state of the world at the moment, that some of these boutique Blu-ray companies and stuff are going to be able to continue functioning. You know, even if they just have to reduce output maybe a little bit, I don't know, to help with things. But I just want more film preservation, more restoration, more bringing context to things that may have been forgotten about or discarded as being trashy or exploitative, without any merit. um, Things like that. I mean, I eat that stuff up. Like things that make us learn about people in an indirect way. Because like when people make these really weird underground, you know, exploitation movies and horror movies and stuff, like some of these films aren't huge successes, and they probably were never made with the intention of being successful, like to the point where they're making lots of money. So obviously these things are like passion projects. I like to understand like what sort of person is making this, what sort of message do they have. It's like the context, and then surrounding everything that's going on in the world and channeling that through the lens of watching these films. So to answer your question, I just want more of the weird stuff. Like this is going to be weird. A lot of your viewers probably be like, I don't like this director, or I've never heard of him. But like Jess Franco is one of my favorite directors. He's very Marmite. So we have an expression in the UK, like is you either love him or hate him, really. There's not a lot of in between with the director, apart from maybe a couple of his films that he's made that some people might find okay, but like, I adore his work, and it's a very much a vibe. I just want more of his stuff, because he made like close to 200 films, and like not many of them were on disc, like in comparison to percentage wise. So I think I've got like 30 of his films on Blu-ray, but that's like a very, very small amount of his films. So for me, on a personal level, I want more Jess Franco films to be restored and brought out. So I know Blue Underground are putting out a couple of the Fu Manchu films on 4K with Christopher Lee. So I'm going to be getting those at some point, because they're Jess Franco films and I want them. But Severin do a really good job of putting those out. And yeah, I think that's about it, really. My spending is really significantly reduced. So when I do pick up something, it has to be something that really excites me. Like, hopefully not all, forever, but for the meantime, I'm taking less risks on like blind buys and stuff. But you know, I've got shelving of blind buys. You know, it's not like I haven't participated in that practice many times in the past. It's just for the foreseeable future, that's going to have to be something that I have to curb. But yeah, think that's all I have to say about that. I love, although I've not been putting too much stuff out on YouTube. Obviously, we're going to be starting the podcast, a podcast series, I should say, in the near future. But I still watch lots of YouTube, lots of channels covering various different topics. As our friend Disconnected covers like lots of news about films coming out, so I'm very much in the space of like learning about what's coming out. I like to keep up with your film journey, and there's so many other people that I still follow and just keep up to date with their lives, what they're doing. So I want that to continue. Like, I don't want that to go away, because that sense of community, even though I'm not like particularly have a consistent face in that, like, I still love being a part of that. So that's something I don't want to go away, and I want to thrive and more people to do it, because physical media is important. You know, there are more important things in the world than physical media, but you know, for us in our hobby, it's a very prominent thing, and we don't want it to go away. So, you know, support it if you can, where you can. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I love it though. No, I echo a lot of that, and Jess Franco is somebody I have not explored too much, so I don't know. I think I've seen the Count Dracula of his, and I think I have the Fu Manchu box set from Indicators. Is that some of his movies?
It has two. It has two
Okay.
Just Franco films in it.
So obviously, said Blue Underground's putting out the 4Ks of those, but no, again, I appreciate you being here, kind of bringing out the message of physical media, and just pretty much for people watching at home, whatever means you can, scaling back if you can, if money's tight with how the financial situation with the world right now, but also just appreciating what you have, but also looking forward to things like Sinners, and more. I suppose, hopefully, things in the future that will propel this medium forward. Being optimistic, but at the same time realistic.
Yeah,
So,
of course, definitely.
yeah. Well, where can everyone find you, real quick, and any last words?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on YouTube, Film Blogger Sam, and that's also my handle on like Instagram. So yeah, I'll just post sometimes what I picked up, occasionally like post on my story like music recommendations and stuff like that. Also on my website, Let's Watch 2, which hosts like the podcast and some of my Blu-ray like written reviews, like old school written reviews of things, you can find at letswatch2.com. And also, just a plug for myself, I've been able, or very fortunate, to have the privilege of writing some booklet essays for some upcoming releases. So in June, Treasured Films are putting out The Last Shark, which is an Enzo G. Castellieri Jaws ripoff. Italian Jaws ripoff, and the film is wild. It's very, very similar to Jaws. It got pulled from the US theater market because it like had a copyright infringement from Universal, but it still played in Europe without any hitch. But it's a fascinating thing, and I wrote an essay that's going in the book, in the book that comes in that. So I was very, very fortunate to do that. And then TerraVision have put out a film called The Children of Violet Rome, which is coming out soon as well. And I was fortunate enough to write an essay for that one. And that is a very mean 70s exploitation film about fascist teenagers running rampant in the city. And it's not a pleasant watch, but it's a informative and important watch if you're into Italian history in general, and also just Italian film history, and particularly with like that sort of political commentary sort of stuff. So yeah, they're coming out soon. So thought I'd plug those, and I think that's everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to read those. I'll get those discs myself. So just to support, those labels and also friends. So Sam, is a pleasure having you on. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed the film journey. Hopefully, it hasn't derailed from the normal film journey enough, but I hope it makes sense for everyone watching. But if anyone is curious or to want to, comment into the journey themselves, feel free to go down in the comment section and tell us your thoughts, and make sure to go follow Sam at those places. I'll put those in the links in the description. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and we'll all see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.
Take care.